You're in the water loop.
Welcome to Waterloop, the podcast helping water leaders to discover solutions and drive change. I'm the host, Travis Loop. This episode comes to you from the Reservoir Center for Water Solutions in Washington, D.C., where Waterloop is a media partner. Many people, particularly in younger generations, want careers that make a positive impact on broad issues such as social justice and climate change. The water industry is promoting that it has jobs that deliver results for people and the planet. One of the messengers is Maura Jarvis, a community outreach consultant for the Philadelphia Water Department. In this episode, Maura discusses how water careers are excellent opportunities to create change in communities, the impact of her work in public engagement in Philadelphia, and advice for people interested in entering the industry. Very excited to talk to you again, Maura. Going to talk about water equity, environmental justice, how careers in water can advance work on those issues. But super baseline, I guess, definition, equity when it comes to water, environmental justice. Like, what do those terms mean to you?
So immediately I'm thinking of a challenge that hits extremely close to home in the neighborhood called Germantown in Philadelphia. This is where I grew up. This is like my childhood neighborhood that I've lived in for my entire life. And something that we're struggling with there is, we call it different things, but infrastructure flooding or urban flash flooding. And so as a result of, Philadelphia is a very historic city. We had, hundreds of miles of historic creeks and streams that used to run all through Philadelphia that have since been encapsulated for closed sewers and developed over top of. And so that is a huge challenge in many areas, but especially in Germantown, where once the Wingahocken Creek used to flow above ground, and now we're seeing the impacts of the encapsulation of that creek and, these more intense storms that are coming in really inundate the sewer system to a point where we're getting an insane amount of flooding, flash flooding. It happens almost instantly. You'll see manholes geysering up, storm drains are overflowing, people are getting backups into their basements. And it is a really tough situation, and especially there because it's not a FEMA designated floodplain. And so it's not required to have flood insurance. A lot of people aren't aware that they're eligible for it, or they can't afford the premium. And then on top of that, a lot of people just aren't knowledgeable about flood preparedness or general emergency preparedness. And so it's a very tough situation. A lot of folks are struggling. Germantown also has a higher rate of rental versus home ownership. And so you have this challenge of people who, they're saying this isn't even my property, but it's my personal items, that are being destroyed. It's my life that is being impacted. And so, that's definitely something that we are absolutely working on in Philadelphia. I am working with a lot of Germantown stakeholders on a community flood risk management task force. And we also had some really cool initiatives in order to just sort of like raise awareness, let people know that we're working on it, and also spread information about what people can do right now to better prepare for situations like that. And so one really neat project that I can think of right now, I've spoken with you about this before, how we're using art as a communication tool. In order to build trust, I feel like you have to have a connection first. It's not just about throwing information out there and hoping that it kind of sticks. We need to be vulnerable with each other so that we can build on top of that foundation. And so something really neat that we did over the last couple of years through a grant with the U.S. Water Alliance is this project that we called Wingo what? Wingo what? All right. So we're talking about the Wingahocken Creek. And the WHAT is an acronym for Water, History, Arts Activation, and Transformation. And so we worked with the former Philadelphia Poet Laureate, Tripita Mason, and we created a series of water-centric poetry workshops where people got to create poetry about their experiences with water. It could be experiences with flooding. It could be experiences, like their first water memory, and it was really awesome. We got to have these really cool conversations with folks who, admittedly, their perception of the water department might not have been that great, but we were getting personal, and I think on both sides, again, that vulnerability, it needs to happen because otherwise, how else are we going to build trust? How else are we going to build real relationships in our community?
That type of project there, that kind of brings down walls, right? A little bit, gets people comfortable, shows that you're humans on your side at that utility. Yeah. And then you can start kind of having bigger conversations.
Exactly. Right? Talking about the historical context and, mitigation options for the future and, emergency preparedness for right now, which is so important.
We're here at the Reservoir Center in Washington, D.C. for this event about careers for change, meaning, working in water to create positive change for equity, environmental justice issues. Great event. You're speaking. How did you get to this spot, when it comes to a career that's making that type of impact? Is that something that you had as kind of like your intention along the way? Was it just a journey that you've been taken on? Like, how did you get to this spot where you're having an impact on those issues?
So if there was an opportunity, I felt like it was necessary for me to seize it. And so it's not so much, looking back on my whole story, and we're going to get into this with my keynote. The main thing with that is we're going to be talking superheroes and we're going to be talking origin stories. Okay. And so when I look back at my origin story, it does make sense how I got here, but it was like really convoluted and not what I was expecting was going to happen. But I think, there was always a passion for protecting the environment. That was something I was just always interested in. But you'll hear more about this, but I just really didn't think that I could work in environmental science or policy or something like that without like a science or engineering degree. So I didn't pursue it academically at first. And so that was like an interesting thing, but I turned to more of like I had other interests in like art and design and fashion. And so it put me in a direction where now I really appreciate having a background in like art and design, because absolutely it's evident today that I love using art as a communication tool. And so, I'm very thankful for that. But it sort of like veered off in another direction for a little bit there. But then, I had an opportunity when I was at university. I went to Drexel in Philly. We have a program there where you can create your own major. And the whole purpose of it, I know it's so cool, but the whole purpose of it is for students who their professional goals couldn't be met with like a traditional major, like they wanted to do something interdisciplinary. And so that's the program that I ended up getting into. And once there, I was able to combine all of my interests. I liked design. I liked environmental studies. I also really was fascinated by how you talk to people about that kind of stuff. How do you communicate with folks about big things like climate change? This is stuff that can truly just like stop people in their tracks. There's a term now called eco-anxiety, and it's and like younger generations really are plagued by this idea that like the future is doomed what can I do? Is there even anything that I can do? And so, how do you talk to people about those things? And instead of the gloom and doom, how do you inspire action?
Yes, this resonates with me very much. With what I'm trying to do with Waterloop, it's like, yes, there are difficult challenges, but there are solutions. Like, let's pursue those and share them. So what was the major that came out of that puzzle?
So my degree is called Sustainable Product Development. It was a really big hodgepodge of things, but it all came together. And ultimately, it was a real focus on, I was very interested back in school. Again, I started off in like fashion and design. So I was very interested in like product supply chains and environmental and human rights injustices that happened in regards to the clothes that we wear, our phones, products, And so the idea was to communicate with people more so about conscious consumption. But it absolutely relates because today we're talking about bottled water.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
And so, so that was just, I think that's when everything sort of came together, and I found out that, okay, my specialty wasn't like a technical field like science or engineering or math, but it was communication.
Well, this is like a really good message for people, is that even if you are super passionate about working in water, whatever aspect, or the environment, right, there are a lot of career options that are not heavy technical. Being an engineer, being an attorney, being a scientist, right? I mean, we're kind of in the same vein, in communications, right? And working with people. There's a lot of different ways that you can get involved and then have an impact without having to go into one of those exact disciplines. Exactly. So your origin story, and the reason you use that phrase for people that might not know, is one of your roles. We're gonna, kind of put you out here. You are Water Woman, so you have the outfit, the cape, the costume. You get out there with the community. You engage and raise awareness and excite people. That's all awesome. And I guess that's one of the ways that you are working on equity and justice in your current career, huh? Is through even that character.
Yeah, I definitely feel like Water Woman absolutely is a role model for stewardship. I feel like, again, you encounter so many people who have sort of lost that connection with the environment or never even had it in the first place. If you live in a really dense city and you don't really have that much access to parks or things like that, or you don't have anybody telling you, okay, like, let's go outdoors. It's funny, there's like an organization, a nonprofit that does that. They're called Let's Go Outdoors. And so, I think for me, something that I feel very strongly about is just, getting with younger generations or really anybody. I feel like Water Woman resonates with a lot of people. There are grown adults who just like absolutely love it. You have to have a superhero on your side, so it makes sense. And so just like, perpetuating that message of, like, we have to care about the environment. Like, this water, again, of all things, we have to protect it. And so, if anyone's out there, and I love the idea of the value of water, like the value. People have all sorts of different, I guess, not the price or the cost, right?
What is the value is more than dollars.
Exactly. And so as we're interacting with water every day, I just, I feel like it's a really unique position to be in as a superhero, to go around. I can be as cheesy as I want to. And, it gets people. I think it's pretty cool. Yeah. And I have that message with me all the time, like the waterways, they need protecting. You can't look at the water and say, "Oh, Schuylkill and Philly." This is a thing that happens in Philadelphia. They call it the Schuylkill
Delaware
Punch.
And the Schuylkill, right?
Yeah. The Delaware is the larger river, and then the Schuylkill is the smaller one. And but I feel like I'm the voice of the river. And I think if the river could say anything, she would say, "Stop calling me that. I'm giving you life. Right. Appreciate me, respect me." I love it. And so, and I'm the messenger. And then, you know, I guess on the other side of that, I really do feel like in terms of engagement, when I'm not wearing a costume, it's equally important to make those connections with folks and elevate the value of water.
This event at the Reservoir Center, there's a big crowd here. I think it's a record crowd for them to hear about careers for change, right? So there's a lot of interest, obviously. What advice would you have for people that want to focus their careers in water more on equity and justice?
Well, I would say this generally to anyone who's interested in environmental justice and equity, or even if you're just sort of thinking about it, you don't know if it's a career for you just yet. Everyone, work in water.
Love it.
Work in water. I think obviously there are a lot of different areas that you can go in, but I just don't think that it can be overstated how essential everyone who is working in water, again, I don't want to sound too repetitive because this is all going to be part of the keynote, but I really feel like anybody who works obviously towards environmental justice and equity in general, but water, we are superheroes. Like, we're saving the day, you know? And so I feel like if you are interested in making an impact, if you want to do something where you can absolutely say in a tangible way, I am making life better for people. You know, I'm providing an essential service. Just work in water.
And there's so many people, I think the younger generations, right, want like that mission to their life, right? They want to be doing something that's making the world better to combat that eco-anxiety or whatever it might be. And so there's a lot of interest in climate work. Water is one of the huge pillars.
And that's the thing with water too, though, because no matter what your interest is, there really is something. Like if you are interested specifically in climate, the water department in Philly has a climate change adaptation program. The way that climate change is going to impact water infrastructure systems is something that we need to be working on right now, you know?
Yeah, sure.
And also, if you're talking about, you know, the water energy nexus, you know, a lot of people who are interested in climate want to go in that direction. I mean, that is ripe, okay, for getting into that conversation about, okay, where actually is a lot of our energy going, okay? And it has a lot to do with water.
In cities, like the water movement, treatment, storage, all that stuff can be like a third of a city's energy use.
Exactly.
That's huge.
And so, you know, and then aside from that, you know, then you get into green infrastructure. You know, you want to work with plants. You want to work with like understanding how these systems work.
Green spaces back into urban environments through
Exactly.
that. Yeah.
Urban heat island effect. I mean, all of these things. Water touches everything.
You're selling it right now, Maura. You're selling it. Yeah.
So I would say generally, I say that because I feel like a lot of young people they're not necessarily keyed into the water sector just yet. I feel like this is a very personal example, but every year I go back to my high school for career day. Nobody knows anything about working for a utility. They probably don't really care that much at that age, but you know what I mean? Like, I feel like the idea of working in water, working for a utility, working for potentially a nonprofit or, you know, like anything like that, or the Environmental Protection Agency, anything, it's not really there, you know? I feel like we don't, or not that we're not doing it, but I just don't feel like a career in water is elevated enough as much as it should be. You know, like the way that people are going, okay, doctors, lawyers, I get it. Yes, we need them. But the way that we talk about careers like that, I'm that person, but I need a few more people to help me out. But we need spokespeople for the water industry.
Sure.
We need people going around selling this stuff like it's candy. Because I really feel like if we just could plant that seed and that understanding that there absolutely is a place for you, really whatever you want to do with your career, doesn't have to have anything really to do with water or the environment, although it should, but you could really do anything. And so, I just feel like that's my pitch, to get more people to work in water.
Well, Maura, it was awesome to sit down with you. You've been on the podcast before, but it's good to sit down in person and chat. And thank you so much.
Of course. I love this. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode. And thanks to the Reservoir Center for partnering with the Waterloop nonprofit media outlet. To find all episodes, sign up for email updates, and connect on social media, visit waterloop.org.
You're in the Water Loop.